Welcome to the Dog Psychology Podcast with Todd and Art.
All right. It is episode 41 or 42. I'm not sure what episode we're on, but this is Dog Psychology Podcast with Todd and Art. How you doing, Todd?
What's up, Art? Did you say you sent that thing out 25,000 views?
25,000 views, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Are they all from the same person?
Probably. I think it's probably Susan Olson is probably the one that she comments on all that. Or Indigenous Pixie, Natasha, I think her name is.
Where do they live? Suzanne's from Sweden, right?
Yes.
And who's the other one?
Natasha is, I don't know where Natasha's from, honestly, but she is comments on all of our stuff. We get quite a few people that are regulars that
that's
that
awesome.
comment.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, seriously.
If you want to send comments and ask questions, things you would like our opinion on, or you think would be a good topic, or you want to send a video for us to break down, feel free. And
we actually got an email from someone that I'm going to go ahead and share. And it's actually a question. It's kind of what the topic that we're going to talk about. And what we're going to talk about today is going to be the human aspect of self-care or mental health, or things that we can do to help ourselves and also help our dogs. Okay. And so this question comes from Kristen. It says, "Hey, Todd and Art, absolutely love your podcast. Why wouldn't you? Thank you for doing it. It's super helpful. Tiny bit about me. I work training guide dogs and worked with dogs in shelters, and I am currently studying canine behavior. I walk dogs and I do basic training in my area. My question is, can a person be an effective pack leader and still struggle with anxiety in the personal life? I'm talking about clinical anxiety and undergoing treatment, for example, medication therapy, as well as mindfulness, etc. If so, do you have any tips or have had any personal experience with that?" Kristen.
And who wants to start? Art, you or me?
You go.
So I, as I've said before, I'm cut from an anxious cloth. That's how it started. If the pandemic would have happened to me as a kid, it probably would have crushed me, because I remember being really anxious as a kid, like almost hypochondriac type shit. It was weird. I do know that my mom, was always kind of hyper nervous, aware of everything. So I think, it comes from that point of view. But I remember being super anxious, and it's a tough energy. The thing as I got older that I was able to regulate that anxiety with, because I became aware of it early, just absolutely as early as could be. There was, in my family, there was your standard, eating disorder issues, it was being manifested around me. And I think that was one of the reasons I went into psychology, is that I wanted the answers to the things I had seen and experienced. And so as I got a little bit older, I would regulate that primarily through diet, exercise, and then I got into meditation. Now, as I've gotten older and I've gotten a little bit more wise, and I've listened to a few people and how they break it down, what I realize is that once you're stuck in the loop of trying to fix it, you're kind of in this weird quagmire because you're keeping it too present. And the pattern of the way that can happen gets really weird, right? Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things that just the act of trying to quote unquote fix it. I'm currently in, active therapy type of thing. It's interesting what that does. And there was a time that was thought to be, that was going to be the way to do it, and medicines and so forth. But as I've gotten through, they've started to realize that things like these medicines aren't really the answers, because they're not really getting to the root of it, which is this combination of how you perceive everything. And then on top of that, how do you go through your processes of taking that perception through thought, through feeling, through action. Mm-hmm. And, there's some people out there that I think are great at helping you break it down. And people that help you get through chronic illness do the same thing. They say, once you're focused on the illness, you're going to be chronically focused on it.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, there's been a combination of things through the years. I'll go into it later. I want you to speak. There's a couple of things that I have actively beat. I'm extremely proud of the fear of flying that I beat, because it wasn't little. Mm-hmm. And, and all the work now I benefit from, like I look forward to long flights, whereas before it was just, oh, fuck. So it can be changed actively, but you have to be able to break it down and know where it's coming from. So what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I actually you had mentioned something about, what did you just say? Um, Forgot, but I'll go in, like, from my personal experience, like, people always say, like, and Art, you're always so calm, and it more so around the dogs. Um, I'm a sensitive person, in the sense of, like, I don't like loud things. If things become too loud, I get a little anxious, or too crowded, I get anxious. I like my privacy. I like spending time with just my family, and I like spending time with other people, but for a certain amount of time, And so I realized that I have anxiety as well, and I didn't realize that until probably like three years ago, maybe. And how
What made you realize it?
I think the big thing, which about this, I had a panic attack in
Yeah.
February of 2023, and I didn't know what was happening. I literally thought I was having a heart attack. I didn't know what happened, and it
Is that the
hit.
only one you've ever had?
No, I had several after that, but I
Okay.
was able to recognize when they're about to happen, and which is key, because I didn't realize what was happening, and so it was a combination of things. Just life. Our house was on the market. We were having to keep our house, um, you know, really clean all the time,
Yeah. With
and
dogs and kids,
dogs and kids, and kids that like to
open
throw.
houses.
Yeah, people, can you show the house in 30 minutes, so I have to load up all the dogs into the van, and then we got to load up. Sometimes we're making dinner, sometimes we would say no, it's like too late, and but we were trying to sell the house, and then uh my dog had passed away. I got threatened in a parking lot of Target by someone who was trying to go after me and River, because River was having a meltdown, and I was like trying to work through it, and he thought that I was either kidnapping him, but then he was trying to come after me. It was this whole thing, right? So I kind of was it was other things that were going on in my life, and so I remember being at home, and it was at night. We just gone grocery shopping. I was just kind of just dealing with a lot of stuff, and then I literally Anne was already in bed because we had our newborn, so she was already putting our other kid down, and then I remember just like I started to feel nauseous. Like I started having this feeling of being nauseous, and then I went and I started to like gag in the toilet. I'm like, man, what is wrong with me? All of a sudden, I just felt like I couldn't breathe, and I was like. And I was like, out of breath. And River was there, and River like freaked out. He looked at me and he ran in the room like, Mama, something's wrong with Papa, And so like, and didn't expect that. So she just thought like, oh, I'm just, maybe I'm getting sick, or like when he said something's wrong, she just thought that I was sick. So she didn't come out of the room, nothing. And then I remember like at that moment, we had quite a few dogs that were staying with us. And then I could hear them. I hear one dog particular whining, and that was just kind of adding to it, because the sound, that vocalness of dogs when they have anxiety was starting to. And I just remember crying on the floor, laying on the floor, and just saying, "Please stop, please stop." And then I remember telling myself, "Just get up, just get up, just get up." And I could not get up, and it lasted for like an hour or so. Like I was stuck on the floor, and all of a sudden I just got up, went and laid down, ended up falling asleep, and I ended up not sleeping in our bedroom. I slept in another bedroom, and I remember I texted Anna, and I just, hey, I don't feel good, and that's all I said. And then the next morning, I didn't even get out of bed. She texted me, and she was like, "Hey, are you okay?" I was like, "No." I was like, "Can you get the dogs out?" She's like, "Yeah, no problem." So I was getting the dogs out. Anyways, like a week later, I started to feel that being nauseous again, and I was like, "Oh crap, it's about to happen again." Sure enough, it happened again. And it happened like 3 or 4 times after that. I haven't had one in a
Was there
while.
a trigger?
I think just being overwhelmed, stress of,
No, on the following ones, were you able to, was there like something that would be happening that would set them off? Or they come out of nowhere?
they would kind of come out of nowhere, but it was all stress related.
Yeah.
I was still stressed.
Totally.
And, I think that when you've worked with dogs long enough, like there comes a point when you start to get burnt out. And I will say that COVID came at a perfect time for us, because I was right before it happened. I was really starting to get burned out. Like it was really starting to affect me. And then COVID happened, and we shut
Right.
down. And so all the dogs left. So we had all that out of the house. And that is also another reason why when we realized like, wow, it's nice to have the house again. And so
Right.
that's why we decided no more dogs in the house that don't belong to us, you know. Now we've gone back to that just because, you know, when you don't board dogs and you're not doing boarding trains, that's a big amount of revenue that comes in, you know. So we had enough revenue to last us a good 2 years, but then it dries up, you know. So then we're like, okay, let's go ahead and replenish it. And so that's what we're doing right now, and you know, doing things. But to answer the question, like, I think it's important too that you can have those things as long as you continue to work on them and don't avoid them, and also separate them when you are working with the dogs.
Well, I think what happens, you just said something important. You know, a lot of coping comes from avoidance. And when you cope through avoidance, the only outlets are going to be fight flight. It's pretty much all you're going to get.
Yeah.
You know, that can come in different ways. It can come blowing out, like you said. I've had a couple of them, and interestingly enough, they were timed around the same time frame of McKenna had been born.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, the start of family and all that kind of stuff, and the pressure. We had moved to Florida from California.
Stressful move.
You know, and so started the business again, and you know, I was busy on top of that, and so it was a little bit of everything, and I really wasn't allowed to be doing what I was doing. I was renting houses and stuff, and so it was interesting. Now, Jen had a series of them too.
I remember because you were from the entire team, like you were the only person that I told. Like I think
you had called me. I thought when you were telling your story, I wasn't sure on the timeline that we had talked. And oddly enough, I'm really good with panic attacks because I had helped my wife through some, and a lot of times visual, like at least in Jen's case and some other people that I've talked to, visual can help. Like putting a ball in Jen's hand would help. When I had him, I thought the same thing, heart attack. I definitely thought that the first time it happened. And then it was, I could regulate it through breathing. And the feeling was weird. It would sometimes come like it would be movement triggered. Like I could move real quick and it would trigger like this feeling of, and it could set off. I would be like, oh, fuck, here it comes. And the last one that I had was not related to stress or anything like that. It was related, I think, to an injury. I was, you know, those standing waves.
Yeah.
The flow rider, I think they're called.
Yeah.
So me and Jen were at a hotel, and this place next door had one of them, and I went and did it. And dude, they should give you a helmet, by the way. And I whacked the shit out of my head twice. One, I cracked my jaw, and one of them I hit my head. And I was standing in line to do it again, and all of a sudden I just got this weird feeling over me, and I just had to get out of there. And then a few days later, I was on the patio, and I was getting ready to do an appointment, and I'm sitting down because I wait for people to pull up. And all of a sudden I got the wave of a panic attack and I went, oh, fuck. Now, Andrew Huberman has a called lateral eye movement tip where you move your eyes back and forth. And I stood up and I started walking and I moved my eyes back and forth and I was breathing and I shut it down real quick. We've had actually quite a few students go through them as well. The first day, you know, like on the first day, there's a lot of stress. You know what I did with one of these guys? Because it was a guy and somebody came in and told me, and all the animals had babies. And so what I'd learned through certain things with Jen and stuff is you can't talk about it. Like you don't bring reference to it. Like I act in a way that I know what you're going through, but I'm not going to talk about what you're going through. I'm going to try to manipulate you in a different direction. It's like real solid redirecting type techniques. I took them into the animals. I took them into all the little animals. And was just like, we're just going to be in here with the animals and hang out. We just kind of stood and let him talk, and we move around with the animals a little bit. And then he had a chance. He went out to his car and he settled down. I think you said something important. It's the acknowledgement. And like you said, I've always viewed it like a pizza. You know, you have so much energy to give yourself, your family, your dogs, the other people's dogs, your clients. And if you give too much, man, some of us drain quicker than others. I think some people can hold on longer than others. I've always been like, if I could be a fly on the wall in like an Angela's house, like how she's able to use so much of that energy that she uses for the dogs that she has. Most of those dogs would die on my watch. You know what I mean? So there's no way I could do that. And so I think knowing what your emotional and giving limitations are. And you said, you know, I'm introverted as shit and a little bit of social anxiety. So you get into some of these events. You know, I'm good if we're there talking about the dogs, but the second it's now just a social event, it's like, oh, okay.
We're going to Captain and Coke or rum and Coke or what? Captain Coke, right? Or that's your drink.
Yeah.
So
90-minute limit.
I also remember that. So that was in 2023, but I had also like in the beginning of the year, I started to really, even before this happened, I started to like, I want to change how I do things. And so I started doing some breathing techniques, some Wim Hof breathing techniques, and I got his app and I started doing it. And so he has like this guided breathing, which is really cool. Cause he tells you like, breathe out, you know? And so when I had my panic attack, the second one, I remember I started to breathe myself through it. And that was a huge help. And so even now, like, I don't even, there's several different breathing techniques. There's like box breathing where you inhale 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds. You know, there's one that you do as well.
Mine's similar. What's the difference between the 4-7-8 versus the 4-4-4? Anything?
Probably
It's all the
not.
same stuff, right?
Um,
I know there's a couple, like I just did one that where you breathe and you, right before you get to the top, you pause for just a second and then you pull up and then you let it out.
yep. That's what Andrew Huberman talks about that one.
Yeah, it's the physiological sigh,
Yeah.
and he talks about he references dogs do it naturally too. Um, do you think when you did the breathing that you were referencing the sound of the breathing? Do you think it was the actual physiology of the breathing? Do you think it was hearing his voice in your head? All of that referencing to the calmness.
I'm glad you asked that question. I was thinking the same thing because I mean, even as I was talking about it, I could hear him again.
I could hear it. I could see it in your face. You like, oh, got all
Let
relaxed.
out, you know, and I could hear his accent and
Yeah.
everything. And that's probably the one thing that I remember. But now, because, you know, I do jujitsu, you have to know how to breathe. And so even throughout the day, I just take these deep breaths. It's called diaphragmatic breathing. It's like, you know, using the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a muscle. And they say that I actually got this from Hicks and Gracie, where he says that when people hyperventilate, they only use 40% of their lungs. Like,
Yeah.
where he's like, you know, you fill up the lungs and then you let it out, but you're allowing your body to become oxygenated. And that's the other thing Wim Hof talks about, like becoming what's the word I'm looking for? Alkalized.
Yeah.
You know, but so when you're able to fill your body up with oxygen. You know, what's also funny is that all of the things that I was doing, whether it was hobbies, were all starting to come together. Card magic. Okay, when I did my class with David Blaine, you know, he does these physical things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He's super like both. He's like this with this mentally heady physical guy, right?
Right. Well, his thing is like it's magic because it seems like it's impossible, right? And he does his breathing where he's underwater for like 17 minutes. I think he holds the record for being underwater for 17 minutes. But he actually has a breathing technique that he does, and he talks about the same thing because he said that he interviewed a Navy SEAL, and when the Navy SEAL, their intention is to basically drown them, so that they're not afraid to drown, that they know they can come back. And then he says something about that right before, like when they're drowning, or when once they've drowned, that they have this psychedelic experience. There's this weird thing that happens. And so within, he started, you know, doing breathing techniques about how to fill your body up with oxygen so that you can hold your breath for a really long time. It's freaking cool. So like you'll do it like without doing the breathing technique. In one sitting, you'll do it like how long as you can do it. I think I could hold it for like 45 seconds. Then after doing the breathing technique, I could hold it for 5 minutes. That's insane. Yeah.
No way.
First try.
Wow. The longest I think I did with the Wim Hof thing, I did like 3.5 minutes, and it's pretty existential, you know, it's kind of outer body to be able to sit there and you're just like, I feel you're going through all this heady
It's
stuff.
light.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so, and you know, Wim Hof has the same thing, you know, like holding your breath and things like that. So when I talk about,
break it down, why it's pretty interesting. Like it triggers an adrenalized response, but then you're working through it. The body doesn't move, and it does all this. He's been studied quite a bit, and you know, there's big science behind this breath stuff.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that, you know, breathing is, you know, that's another thing Hicks and Gracie always talks about. Hicks and Gracie is like, you know, the grand champion of the Gracie family in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And he talks about how like you can starve yourself and live for a long time. You can be without water and live for a long time, but you cannot be without breath. And so, you know, he's like, you know, after so many minutes, like you die, you go brain dead.
Think about how simple, when you start practicing breathing, one of the things you realize is how much you really weren't breathing very well.
Yeah.
It sounds so stupid. So you might have somebody that's seems lazy. And one of the reasons they're acting lazy is because they don't ever really breathe right. And your entire body's predicated on the way you get oxygen. Your brain's a muscle. Like everything needs that oxygen. And people who breathe poorly are almost always like, they don't realize it, but they're gasping for air. And because they've never taken like their lungs and got their lungs to inflate the right way and work, as you said, use the diaphragm and get the diaphragm engaged. I think that's the one thing that something like yoga or meditation or like anything, jiu-jitsu, when I was boxing, same thing. I mean, the breath is everything. Without it, and when you're working with dogs, people, when you stop breathing, that's like a trigger. Like the breath, the dogs are picking up on the way you breathe, just like we pick up on them. Like we can hear in their breath, we can see in the speed of the breath, or all of a sudden they stop breathing. Those things all have meanings. And when we see a dog in a nice, long, slow, breathing pattern, we rarely see them in a state of other issues. And I know they're looking at us the same way.
Yeah. It's almost like that when the episode, when you were working, you had that dog that was in a crate and it started like making a little bit of noise, and all of a sudden you hear the dog go, and I was like, oh, there it is right there. I didn't see it, but I could hear it. It's the same thing. Like, so those breathing patterns that you pick up, and then once the dog is like, let it go, like they just let it go.
They let it go.
And it's important also, you talked about, wow, that was really loud. Sorry about that. Another thing, I had turned my notifications off, but I didn't set it for my wife. My wife can still text me. So let me. All right. The other thing is that the diaphragm is a muscle, right? And so if you don't work that muscle, it's going to be very weak, and it's always going to work because it's what makes you breathe. It, pulls the lungs down to, inhale. But I definitely like to not overwork it, but just exercise it. Open it up, pull it to the fullest ways it can go, and then let it go. So that's one of the things that breathing is really, really important. And that's something we do at TCW too, if you think about it.
How do you feel? And I look at people and see if they're breathing. You can see people hold their breath all the time. People. I mean, if somebody lets you touch them by the arm just a tiny bit, you can feel. I mean, people are rigid. People are really, really. So I think when, from the question of anxiety, it's not just what we're talking about. It's understanding how you relate to things and how those things make you anxious, and what are your options about that. Do you know what I mean? I think that once you've kind of tapped out all these things, because we get a lot of people, I meditate, I do this, I do that, but I'm still anxious. So to me, it gets down to, okay, well, how's it happening? Like, so if I were to take you through how anxiety worked for me on a plane, for example, I could take you through it. And I could even take you through how I broke it down, because it was a combination of factors. But I don't know if people do that. I see a lot of people, they get anxious, and the anxiety actually makes them stop thinking. So the brain kind of almost like it stops. It goes to avoidance real quick. It's like, oh, I can't do that, I'm going there. And then everything goes from there. And it's getting pretty much prevalent across the board. Everybody I'm working with is coming in anxious. Yeah. And I'm, the intensity in the dogs is varying in degrees, but I had one a couple days ago. They walked in and it was like, the energy in the dog was like, my goodness, this dog was manifesting their anxiety at the highest level. And that's the thing when it comes to, the question being, when you work with dogs, they're going to know. Yeah. They're going to know. How well you can mask it is going to be, I think, how well you can manage the symptoms of it, the physiological symptoms, because with anxiety comes cortisol, and cortisol, in my opinion, would be scent, would be marked by smell. It would be marked by subtle changes in your movement, subtle changes in the way that your muscles are working, and with the way that dogs read each other. I believe that those things are easy for them to see.
And this is why I think that the walk is so important, right? I'm not just talking about with the dog, but just us and self. And you mentioned also how you took the student to the animals. It's being out in nature. And getting to, and I think that's one reason why, we love dogs, because we actually bring nature in, but what happens, we trap the anxiety there inside the house. And so I love what you did with that student by taking them into the animals so that, they can help with the anxiety. And, people can't undervalue a walk. Like, just the simple act of moving is so important. And I always hear Lynn in the background, move. That's like a joke within our house when I'm talking to River, like move, because he knows it's Lynn. And so moving is really important, and just a simple walk, like it's not gonna. You can only benefit from just getting your body moving when you have anxiety. I know for a fact.
Have you heard David Goggins talk about that? He says he doesn't think about making himself feel better. He goes, if I feel off, I'll start walking and it'll trigger my mind to open up. And then he goes just in the direction you said. So what he'll do is walk to get himself to be able to deal with it. He doesn't think about things. He just starts moving. That's why when dogs are anxious, they move. They're trying to get that energy out.
Yeah. I mean, Forrest Gump did it. I mean, he just kept running. I just kept running.
So funny, dude. I referenced Forrest Gump yesterday. So I'm working with a dog that's kind of shut down a little bit. It was a dog that lived on the streets and then it went into a shelter for a long time. And it talk about manifesting or wearing its energy. This dog was so tense and so kind of like one of those dogs that if you put a little bit of pressure with the leash and then you put a little bit of pressure with your hand on the butt to get it to manipulate it, dude, it's like steel. You know that if you go into enough pressure to get it, you got a 50-50 shot of also getting a snap.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You're like, all right, so here's the deal. I've started this whole concoction now. How much am I willing to go through this? Because I can tell I got a 50-50 shot of a bah. Because it was a pity, it was everything was lined up for it. I was able to manipulate one, but when I started to get this dog, I go, this dog needs to run. And I started to run with this dog. And as soon as you saw this dog start to run, it went like that. And I look at the guy and go, dude, why do you think Forrest Gump did it? So it's funny you just said that running does it, man. Forrest Gump says.
Well, last week I talked about the dog that I brought in. He's a really tense dog. I'll give a little update. He's doing really good, actually. But my main focus with him I told the owners, like, I got to get him to move because he doesn't want to move. And if he does move, it's because he wants to go after something, right? And so I was like,
he goes from shutdown to
fight.
Is he when you say go after something, like predatory something or like to fight something?
Predatory. And but he's been doing really good. Yesterday I introduced him to Anne had a dog. We kind of set it up because earlier in the day when I took him out for a walk, I didn't see a dog was walking down the street and he had his explosion, but I didn't see it. And I was like, crap, but at least he moved like something. And I was like, okay, I know that's not what I want, but I was actually kind of like glad that he actually did do something, because I told Anne, I was like, well, now I have a frame of reference. Now we're going to set this whole thing up. So after I put him away, fed him, we got one of our dogs, got Anne outside and across the street. And so when we walked out, I wanted Anne and the dog just to be there. And I filmed the whole thing. There's a moment where he looks up and I'm like, come on, let's go. Keep moving. And I just kept him moving. Then he was like, what the heck? But now he was actually moving, but he wasn't moved. It's almost like I redirected his energy because he was like moving forward. Right? And what's that? You
surprised him.
And then he's like, oh, well, I'll just move with you. And then he started moving. And then time he looked, like, nope, come on, keep moving. And I just kept him moving. And I was like, let's go, let's keep moving, And I got this whole thing on film, by the way. Not film, but my phone. And then we walked around the whole block, and he'd never gone around the whole block. And I said, walk in front of me, walk behind me. And he's like just moving. His body was loosening up. And all of a sudden he just looks up at me and his mouth is super soft. I'm like, hey, buddy, what's up? He's on muzzle, obviously. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? Good seeing you. I'm glad to, I'm finally here, And ever since then, he's starting to come out. And so the owner had sent me a video of him when he was a puppy. And he was like very happy-go-lucky. I'm like, what happened to this dog? Like, what happened? And they were like, oh my God, I swear, we haven't done anything to him. He's had nothing but love and this and that. I just think he's just a sensitive dog that took in something. I don't know what, but I think he took in.
That's where I've had a case, in the not too far past where there's something, I don't want to go too far into it, but there's something I'm vibing on.
Yeah.
In the family. And in the presence of that energy, I did a post about a hospice nurse talking about what the dogs will do when we die, like how they'll mimic our symptoms and they'll go through it. I mean, and over again, dogs will almost die. They'll stop eating. They'll do all these things. Mm-hmm. And everybody in the comments, it got a lot of activity, but people were like, absolutely, our dogs are that sensitive, da da da. But that I don't think people pull far enough back to go, okay, but that isn't just connected to death. That's all the time, right? I have a really weird case coming up next week. So I go down to Fort Lauderdale, and this guy who has a dog that supposedly can do math and remember things way detached from situations and can play blackjack and can tell and spell your name through. I'll send you the video. Oh shit, I should have sent you those videos. Fuck, why didn't I send you those? Of what it'll do is it paws them. It's like that horse that used to count, right? Then it paws him. And he's got a letter. He's got a couple of letters. One's from a sports psychologist who's saying that he says this dog is like looked at a picture, a framed picture on a table, and then spelled out the breed of the dog in the photo without being told or without ever seeing the photo.
Come on.
So I see the video of this happening. I'm getting somewhere with this to the point of where I think a lot of, ultimately this is going to sound almost hokey and corny, but I don't really think it is. I really think it is I think if you spend enough intention working with a dog, believing that they can do these things, when ultimately they're doing is they're reading you. You're sending it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like it's this connection. So the guy looks at the picture, sees a Rottweiler. It's almost like the dog's reading his mind. It's almost like they're like symbiotic in nature, right? Because I believe that is part of how this can be working, right? Because it's so honed. This guy, just like that guy with the border collie who spent 6 or 10 hours a day training his dog, the one that they said was the smartest dog in the world. Now, a little side note, I started studying that. He also let that dog herd sheep all the time. So, I mean, that brings in a variable that completely changes things for me. So I'm not trying to be skeptical, but
why does that change things?
Because it opens up a fulfillment that brings in something that's not just this work they're doing.
Right. Okay. That's what
it's tapping more into
I just want to clarify because
it's tapping more into the natural side of the dog. So it's helping the neurons and so forth connect. So this guy wants me to write a letter like saying that this dog is going to be all this magical stuff. So I have an appointment with this guy with the dog that's supposed to be able to spell. It's supposed to be able to say I get to ask questions and it's supposed to do this shit. So I think I found where the weakness is. And this is where I wonder what's going to happen. I'm going to ask him. And if it does, this is where it's going to get really weird. I'm going to ask him if he can step outside and the dog will do it with me or anybody else. Because for this to be the innate knowledge they're saying it is, that means the dog retains it in the brain. In the absence of the human, that means the retainment is coming from something in the connection between the dog and the human, or a conscious or unconscious prompt from the human. And it's weird because I actually told the place I didn't want to do the appointment. I go, I don't want to do this appointment. This sounds silly. This guy wants me to validate his dog. So now I have to almost be skeptical. Like he's looking for media attention and he's looking for something. But I who knows? Maybe I'm going to be like, holy shit. Maybe I'm going to sit there and go, how is this even happening? I doubt it, but what do you think? What are your thoughts on this? I should have sent you the video. I'm fucking disappointed I didn't.
You can text me after.
I will, because you can see it. He actually has the dog in two contexts, doing blackjack and spelling the name of a reporter and something else. Now, what was interesting in the blackjack, so the dog is sitting facing this way. Like, I don't know if you can see my eye. It's facing this way. And he holds up a card, and it looks like he holds up a card a little bit over here, but the dog stays facing this way. It doesn't even look like to me like the dog looks at the card. And so it's anyways, this will be interesting. It'll be I see him on the 31st. I'll tell you what it's like.
Cool. All right. So let's get back to what we're talking about. When it comes to like working with dogs and when it comes to, mental health of us, there's things that I believe that people need to do things that are outside of the dog stuff. And I'm a firm believer in that. It's okay to separate yourself. You don't have to consume yourself because again, you will get burned out. For me, I'm always I like to learn new things. I took up a new language. I learned German, a little bit of German, obviously because I also wanted to learn how to speak to my wife's family. I'm not that fluent, but I can pick up certain things. So that's a learning thing. And for me, it keeps I'm getting old. We're both getting old, right? And so I think in order to have longevity, we have to keep our brain learning new things. Even though it's harder to learn now, it's important to create new sheets of myelin, to
Yep.
fire off and things like that.
It's also good for your emotional health to have that building mindset where you're building something, moving forward with something, making something a little bit better.
Yeah. I learned card magic. That was something that I wanted to do.
That's cool shit. That takes time, huh?
Oh, it takes so much time, but also like the dexterity of you have something in your hands that you're doing and how to feel things. All those things that I just love doing.
How long does it take to learn a new trick?
It depends. I mean, there's some things that you could learn in 2 seconds. I mean, honestly, I could show you.
Go down the magic rabbit hole. So that's what I think is cool is because you can use that for the people you help, because you're having to repeat something until you get it, and just the learning new things, it applies everywhere.
And then obviously jiu-jitsu is another thing that I love doing, something physical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, women too, but more so for men. Men have to be do something that's physical for mental health, really. And I want to share a story real quick. Yesterday we were drilling. We were doing we're sparring yesterday. When you spar, you call it you're rolling. That's what they call it. And so usually when I'm rolling, I'm fairly, in the beginning I used to panic when I get trapped and I don't know what to do, and you start flailing. Now I'm just kind of when I'm stuck, I'm like, okay, how do I figure out how to get out of this? And I breathe, and sometimes I won't even push real hard. I'll just wait, see what the other guy's going to do, and just kind of figure things out. Yesterday I was rolling with the guy. He's a white belt. He's a 1-stripe white belt. I'm a 3-stripe white belt. He's definitely a bigger guy. And he came in pretty strong, pretty not aggressively, just strong. He tried to submit me, and then all of a sudden, just something in me just not snapped, but something in me, not anger, but this. Oh no, this is not. I'm not gonna let them. I need to control this whole situation. And I was something came over me, and I was like, oh hell no, this is not happening. But not in an angry way, just
Did you stab him?
No, I didn't stab him. But I ended up he was in the guard, which is the position where he's on the bottom, which is the position I usually like to work from. And so I was just pushing into his throat, and I put my legs up, and I was just choking him out. And he was flailing, but it was interesting because that feeling had never happened to me before. That particular feeling. And I came home, I was I don't know what happened to me, but it was a kind of a good feeling. But I had this sense of release that was really good, that I was I got this I don't know what it was. It was this feeling I just had to let go. And it was a great feeling.
Do you know how hard it was for me to not say a joke through that entire thing? if you go back and watch all the
we're not going to talk about that, Todd, because we're not talking about golf carts or anything like that.
Look, I'm trying. See, I just better.
Oh my God, that's funny.
That's awesome. I actually envy you for getting into jiu-jitsu. I think it's something that it seems cool, a little chessy. It's physical, it's physical chess, and you're having to anticipate movement, use movement. I think it's super cool.
Yeah, I love it. It's really been really cool. And there was, obviously there's aside from all this stuff is I have an ice bath after jiu-jitsu. I came home and did an ice bath. That's another thing that's helped out. I mean, I can't pinpoint, there's just a lot of things that we've done that I've done to help out. I've done yoga too. I really like yoga as well. But every day I stretch every single way. I have these Olympic rings, and I do what's called a dead man hang. And for my back, oh my goodness, I just feel
you just hang, right?
Just hang, and
hanging is awesome.
I just feel my spine just you can literally feel it and hear it, all the small joints in my shoulders. And with jiu-jitsu, your shoulders get worked a lot. They try to submit you, and that's actually something that's really helped me out. Because one guy is why are you not tapping? I was because I'm super flexible. On my left side, I'm flexible. On my right side, I'm not that flexible because I had a tear. But I love hanging. It's just one of my favorite things. I just hang.
You can do the ones where you hang upside down. Same thing. It's just allowing the spine and everything to just.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing. What you're saying is it's a little bit of everything. right? So to really, I think, maximize what you can get out of a dog is everybody needs the same thing. They need your ritualization. You need to ritualize for them. You need to be walking and exercising and meditating and eating right. I mean, diet can't be overlooked. I do think they smell us. You need to be, I think you need to understand how your emotions and how your anxieties work. Something as simple as, we're responsible for things with the dog. So I had a dog that was getting anxious in the car. So I had to wait. I had to wait it out.
Yeah.
Right. So if that's a human and you jump out of the car, you left your anxiety marker right there. So you're still anxious in the car. Your brain still references the car as anxiety. Right. So if you're a human and you realize, oh shit, I'm anxious here. All right. Well, I need to start doing some breathing or some of this eye work, or I need to have somebody tell me jokes, or I need to walk. I don't want to leave this area feeling this way. Otherwise, my brain's going to reference this again and again and again. And that's the part about anxiety that, I mean, people don't always focus on. And this is where, like, a Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks about it's you have to change the way you're going through it. You have to recognize what you're going to do, and then you have to go, okay, well, I have to put different thoughts into different actions. And since you don't have somebody there doing it for you, like we can do for the dogs, the mindfulness it takes is pretty brutal. And it's easier to stay anxious than it is to be aware enough and to apply all these little tools and techniques and get yourself through it. And I think we are just a collection of everybody else's anxiety more than we are our own. But then we feel bad that we think we're anxious. I mean, look at all the energy that we're surrounded in, especially when you're in some of these bigger cities, LA and stuff like that. Just the vibration of what's around you.
Yeah.
You take it in. My walk is so nice. I mean, you see where I live. It's so much out in the open. I'm on the boat every day. I'm a Cancer sign. I've always got my greatest sense of like clean and release in the water, surfing and stuff like that. So you need to know how to release all that stuff in you, and you need to understand how you work. I don't think people take enough time to know how they work, to know when things are happening. I remember you'd called me and you'd said something, and it's like, it's half good, half bad. If you didn't care, you'd suck at what you did. The problem is you care, and then you start to care too much, but you don't have the tools to balance that out, and all the pressures that go with it, and breakdowns can happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if men or women are more vulnerable to it. We all are. It'd be interesting to know. I wonder who handles it better. I wonder who is able to conduct themselves better over time.
That's a really good question.
A lot of single people in the dog world.
Yes, this is true. A lot of single people. And another thing, and I'm just going to, share.
And older people in the dog world don't look young and healthy, by the way.
No, they don't.
So this is why it's like certain nurses. It's the same. The nurses that stay looking hot and fit hurt when they give you a shot. You know what I mean? It's like they have a shield. They don't take in energy. And the nurses that take in energy look like shit, but they're all great at their jobs.
But that's important to take care of yourself. If you think about it, like optically, and not just like, just not optics, but like everybody, if you think about it, everybody that's TCW does something for their mental health. Everybody does.
Yep.
Eve, you, me, Melina, Jojo works out. Melina, does her thing, keeping in shape. Steve, same thing. Yoa, same. All of us, like, we do it because
dirt bikes. Everybody's doing something outside of just doing the dogs.
Yeah, and that's really important because I know. I mean, I had someone that I knew years ago that they started working with dogs. And that was their whole life, and got burned out, consumed them, got involved with drugs and alcohol, went to rehab, came back, started, working with the dogs again in a more mental space, but still hadn't fully recovered or fully healed from the damage. And this person ended up taking her own life, unfortunately. You know what I mean? And so
yep. I do.
That's sad. And you knew her, but it's just one of those things that can, like, I know someone else right now that I don't really know her yet, but she is a woman who reached out to me, who was a trainer. She wasn't from here. She moved here recently, and I follow her on Facebook, and like, she's been wanting to meet up with me, and I kind of don't want to because of I see her post and I can see her going down the wrong path. Now, part of me says, well, maybe I can help her, but I feel like she's so involved in the things that she's doing with the dogs that I feel like maybe someone needs to tell her, because I've seen this before. I've seen this pattern and I'm scared to get close.
Well, but we're just talking about how much energy do you have to give somebody that is not at the current moment close to you. So your human side says, yeah, I want to reach out and help them. But I mean, as you just said, as you get a little bit older, you have to start making choices based on what's good for not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
For everybody around you.
Well, also there's the other side of it is that, of course, you don't know this, but I've been surrounded by loss this whole year. I lost two of my cousins. I lost, the person we're just talking about. And then just last week, I lost a classmate from high school that I just had a conversation with at my high school reunion.
Wow.
And he committed suicide as well. And so, it's just like one of those things. It's like, man, like, part of me, like, him and I had a really good conversation. And there's nothing I would have changed about that conversation. He had gone through some things in his life that he had overcome, but they were still kind of just lingering there. And, I just got word, like I said, on Monday, and that one really, I mean, they've all hurt me, but that one hurt me as well. And so, a part of me like doesn't want to get close to certain things, because at the end of the day, like my mom had mentioned something like, oh, like, not that she was directing this to me. She's like, I wonder what we could have told him. I'm like, there's nothing. I go, we had a really good conversation. Like, it's like, at the end of the day, I'm not there to, like, I don't know what people are going through. I'm just having a good open conversation with people, and I'm there to help them out. And just, he knows how much I cared, and, as a friend. But at the end of the day, like, they're going to make the decision regardless of what other people think, because they know that they're loved, like they're cared for, right? But they don't believe it.
Correct.
And so that's not on me. And so, like, at the end, I also when I had a conversation with Anne about it, I was like, again, I don't control those things, but what if at one point, we did help somebody and we don't know about it because they're still with us. You only know about it because they're not with us anymore. So anyways, the thing is, like, we have to take care of ourselves. Like Marshawn Lynch, you got to take care of your mentals. He used to say that. You got to take care. He's a football player.
Yep.
You got to take care of your mentals.
One of the things that was eye-opening for me early on, and a little side note to the story you just said, I was watching something about an investigator that had to go to the apartments of people who had jumped off of the Golden Gate Bridge and gather their belongings and so forth. And he says there was one where he read a letter, and it said, if somebody stops me, or if one person between here and the time I get to the destination says hello or says something like that, then I won't do it. But he did it.
Yeah.
And the point is sometimes all it takes is, saying hello or showing a little humanity to somebody. So you did that, it's not like the last time you saw him, you didn't do anything. And so it's tough, and you can never know what somebody's going through. And sometimes you're meeting them when they're thinking about it, and sometimes you're meeting them when they've decided to do it. Yeah. And that's the one you won't ever read because they're kind of going to be at peace.
Yeah.
And so I have a very immediate family member who attempted suicide, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And that, it's something that if they honor the way that they go through shit, and we had this conversation with Lynn, and that was one of the things I was saying. I'm like, look, man, I have to regulate how much shit goes in.
Mm-hmm.
I have to regulate what goes in.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's going to be things that go in there that I'm not going to be able to move around the right way. And it's like, it'll be stronger than my ability to move around my thoughts. And that's something that with anxiety, I have learned how to regulate. And you know what I mean? And I think that's important. I don't want to I'm watching a lot of dogfight videos now. I'm breaking them down, and I like watching them for the breakdown. But the reality is I'm very, very mindful of watching like attack videos.
Yeah.
I don't need that in my head. I know how fast those images can pop up in my mind. And so when I had just moved to Florida, I was working with a woman, her name was Joe Maldonado, and she was
I know she is.
Yeah, that's right. She came out to the event, and she was helping me with meditation. I was in her house. I'm all meditated out. I'm all zenned out. She's guiding me through it. Da, 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 da. And one of her dogs starts barking. And I remember his little dachshund starts barking. I start coughing immediately. Go through the whole thing. Da, 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 da. And almost like a debrief. She goes, we talk about that coffee. I'm like, yeah, that was weird. I just started coughing. And because I wasn't sick. I didn't have anything going on. She goes, yeah, it happened after the bark. She goes, you've told me you hate vocalizations. And I go, oh yeah. She goes, you had to get it out. Because I was so deep and open, like I was in such an open state with the meditation that the bark went in like poison to me, because it was like a mental toxin to me. And I just ejected it out. And like that, for that little thing has been like a monumental concept to me since then, because it I don't know, it cemented how sensitive we can be in a way that you really don't have control over. So think about how many little barks your brain takes in, all those little jolts to your system that it takes in and doesn't get out. And it comes in and you don't breathe properly. And it comes in and you don't honor how it goes. And it just builds up. And before you know it, you're not having anxiety. You have a buildup of all these little moments that you've never really moved past. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's where the approach is a little bit skewed. And the medicine doesn't change the mind.
Yeah.
It'll drug the body. And I think for some people, I've never taken any anti-anxiety or any psychotropic drugs of any kind.
Me neither.
I've relied on what I think is available to me in the more holistic sense, food, vitamins, exercise, all the stuff we've been talking about today, things for my mental health, limiting chaos.
Yeah.
Limiting chaos. And look how, I mean, to a point where it can be really fucked up where I'll just stand up and walk out. That's literally where it's like, I can't be in here any longer, because it's like, I've reached the proverbial limit.
I've seen you do that too.
And that's me going, nope, I'm done.
And then I was like, I'm going to follow you, Todd. I know exactly what you're talking about, because we're at a restaurant in California. The energies actually, we talked about this last week, and I was like, I saw you walk out. I was like, I'm going to follow you because this is too much for me.
Oh, that was when we were in Fort Lauderdale. We went to Outback.
Oh, that's right. I was there for that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was when I was like, yeah, this
one I did not catch though.
Oh yeah, that was an energy one.
Yeah, I do remember that now. But the other thing, you also mentioned Joel Dispenza is a really good resource. I think people who don't know who Joel Dispenza, he has a really good
Is there an L? Is it Joe or Joel?
Joel.
Oh, I thought it was Joe.
It is Joe.
Is it Joe? Yeah, I think it's Joe.
I don't even know.
Here, I'll look it up.
Just Google it. It's a good resource. And also, one of the things that I also want to mention is because we're talking about...
it's Joe.
Joe, okay.
Yeah.
The thing also is, being around Caesar, and I mentioned this, I said this in front of one of the graduations, how when I met Caesar 11 years ago, he's very different. And he's always making an effort to improve himself, because when I first met him, he was very guarded. You remember that? He was very guarded, very he didn't trust people, not very trusting because of all the people. And now he's a team around us. We've gone through it all, Todd. We've gone through all the changes and stuff like that. And so now to see, he talked about on the episode, I got Luis, who's been with me for a long time, Melissa, who I've known for, she came back and worked for us. And so he started, and you notice he's opened up more to us.
They get a nod, but we don't get a nod.
I know.
Jesus, dude.
It wasn't our podcast, so that's
true.
But all the stuff that he's done for himself.
What do you think of that? What do you think of the mushrooms and the ayahuasca and all of those type of things?
I think that it obviously is beneficial. I know Andre had asked me oh, do you think about doing it? I was like, honestly, I really don't think I would need it, but I've kind of changed that. I think maybe I could benefit from it.
Have you ever done mushrooms?
Never.
No?
Never done mushrooms, never done ayahuasca, never done any type of...
we did it. Me, Steve, and Yoa did it with him.
I remember.
Yeah, it was, we did it at that place in Malibu.
Yeah.
And honestly, so here's what the conclusion I came to. So it was a big nothing burger for me. And it's either because I'm walled up stronger than Fort Knox, or I'm not holding on to anything, because I did.
What do you think it is?
I actually do think it's the second, because I've been meditating and breathing for years and years and years. I've gone through a lot of stuff.
Did you have any
To me,
purging?
what's that? I threw up.
Hmm.
It was, but not like a big deal. And it was a very, very long, deep meditation. I mean, and it wasn't like I went into any really deep, dark places. Now, for me, like mushrooms are a little bit more existential of accessing, I think, the positive side of getting in there. But I don't really think I harbor too much, like, if you want to call it trauma, things that I'm holding on to.
Yeah.
And so maybe if I did it again, it would be different. But like I said, I didn't go through anything that was too bad. I would be open for doing it again. The mushrooms I enjoy. I think people can get a lot out of that, especially some of the low dosing of mushrooms and stuff, because
Yeah.
it does move some of your mind around, like your unconscious part. Jennifer's done something where it's
Your wife?
rapid eye desensitization,
Oh yeah,
where
yeah.
they
It's called
mimic REM. Yeah,
RMD or rapid eye.
yeah, something like that, and it was really effective. And essentially, it's cool that by moving your eyes a
Yeah.
certain way, you trigger a state of mind that you can then change some of your traumatic thoughts or experiences with. And I think when you can manipulate your unconscious, you're going to be doing more good because you're getting into the deeper part of where shit lies.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons people struggle meditating is because their brain has gotten conditioned to hide, I guess is the way to put it. It's, and not really face things. And then all of a sudden you're still and all there is your breath. Your brain's like, nope, fuck this. And that's why people say, oh, I can't meditate. My brain won't slow down. It's like this unconscious safety valve that people pull, and it's because their brain is not ready and prepared to let the unconscious open up. And that's why I think possibly the experience wasn't one thing or another, because I'd already done that. And again, I don't know, maybe I'd built up something so thick around it that it takes multiple sessions. We had a shaman, the whole deal.
Yeah.
It's actually Will Smith's shaman.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
when you're in Hollywood, right? Do as.
Jeez Louise, that's the least person I want to become.
I was like, at one point I opened my eyes and he was over there like doing the fucking the Charlton or whatever, the Carlton.
Carlton.
But that dude was on a flight next to me one time. Carlton Banks, whatever his name is.
What was his name? Lorenzo something.
Oh yeah, that's right, Lorenzo something.
The other thing that I wanted to add also is that one thing that has also helped me, Brian Gruber.
Oh yeah,
BrianGruber.com. He's done some energy work with me, and I honestly still don't really know how to describe it other than it was amazing. And when I first got it, when I reached out to him, it was because he reached out to me and said, "Hey, by the way, I'd love to do a session with you." And I was like, "Okay, sure, whatever." And when I left, it was a 2-hour session. I was like blown away, like what he was able to help me and guide me through. And he does like muscle testing.
Caesar too.
He did. I introduced Brian to Caesar, but Brian already had gone to TCW, but we didn't know he had done all that stuff. And then Caesar did it, and Caesar's like, "Man, that guy's a real deal. Like, it's legit." And so I've had 2 sessions with him, and we're actually.
See, that's why I want to go see that guy train that dog, but I'm kind of not sure because like people like Brian exist where there's these things that you can't explain. He's tapped into a different rhythm with us, like you know what I mean. He's tapped into something different.
Definitely was very different. And like I said, I had these hallucinations with him that this feeling, I won't go into all the details of it, but it was this thing that I've been holding on to, dealing with. And then he asked me a question, like, "Where do you want to put it?" And I said, "I want to bury it in the ground." He's like, "Oh, bury it in the ground." All of a sudden I had this feeling of like water leaving, not like peeing, but like water leaving my feet, just flowing out of my body. Like, and I felt hot. My body felt like I was on fire, and the water was flowing down, and then all of a sudden I got cold. It was the weirdest feeling I've ever had. Like, I was like, wow. And I started seeing like all these colors, and it was crazy.
Well, have you done another one since?
I haven't, but him and I we're gonna partner up. We're actually going to be doing a retreat
at his place.
Yep, in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah,
in January. So
we talked about it, but in my typical lack of follow through fashion, I haven't been back in touch with him about it. Yeah. I went down there when he was building out,
Oh, it's so nice, that place now.
And I was given advice on what I thought could work, as far as if you wanted to set it up in a way that you're rotating, so that you could take use of the land, things would be safe. You could have people with dogs. Just what I thought of, like the layout for workshops and so forth, even, bringing a TCW type of thing
Yeah.
there.
Yes, we're
So
gonna.
if you go down there, then I have to go down there. If you guys don't mind, then
Yeah, of course, it'll be
we'll
in
make it.
January. So we're actually we're meeting with him tomorrow to get some details ironed out. But yeah, I'm really excited about that because it's gonna be more of a retreat. It's gonna be a small group. People can bring their dogs if they want.
Multi-day type of thing.
Yeah, it's a 4-day thing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then there was one more thing I wanted to add to that, Brian. I forgot what the other one was. Another one I was going to add to that, but anyways, I think we've covered a lot today, and we've already gone an hour. So, well, cool.
Nice. Don't be anxious, people.
Yeah, actually, I mean, you can be anxious, but this is important. This is a key thing to remember: is like if you do have anxiety or anxious person, it's important to get help. Like at the end of the day, don't stay stuck there. Just like we would work with the dogs. Like don't allow the dog to stay stuck there. Don't allow yourself to stay stuck there. Do something that's going to benefit you to help you with the anxiety.
Oh, I'd said earlier I wanted to break down how I did the flight, like to like almost like the technical side of it. And this is the hard part, because when you're really afraid of something and there's a high anxiety, it can be difficult to separate what you're going through from who you are, right? And that can be the challenge of it. So what I mean by that is, how do you go through it? What I realized is there was a couple of factors. One was auditory. So it's like we take the dog's nose, eyes, ears, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is like what PTSD is ultimately it's your senses have taken in this information and connected it to something traumatic. And I would imagine the sense of smell is probably one of the most powerful ones, because it's connected to such long-term memory and dopamine and shit like that. For me, the flight was obviously the emotional anticipation. So the build up, the whole days and before, and when you get to the airport, that part was terrible. But the actual anxiety part from the flight was coming from the changes in sound from the engine, where it would go boom. That was also meaning that they were speeding up or slowing down usually. So as the plane would be going through turbulence or movement related things, that would totally trash my psychological state. Now I've gotten motion sickness and stuff because maybe there's some equilibrium connection, but the movement would really fuck with my anxiety. And then when you added the sound to it, it was horrible. Now, obviously there was things I was looking at. I don't remember anything visual per se, but this is what I would do. So when I got hired by Caesar, which is almost 10 years ago to the day, by the way, I knew I was going to fly all the time. And so I had to do something about this. And so I started meditating a lot for the fact that I was going to be flying and that I was going to be working with Caesar. And so I would put the headphones on. I'd put noise canceling headphones on when I got to the airport. I'd meditate all the way down the walkway. I'd meditate as I sat down and everybody was boarding. I'd close my eyes and I'd meditate. And then when the plane started to take off, I would turn the sound on loud and usually something a little bit more musical. I'd close my eyes and I'd bounce my legs and bounce my head to compensate for the movement orientation. And then as I started to be able to do it more and more, just like we do with the dogs, I was able to remove my actions. I was able to open my eyes, right? But I would still play the headphones and I would still bounce my head. And then I was able to stop bouncing my head, and then take off the headphones. And it got to be something I did so often that it is one of the weirdest things is that a plane seat now triggers almost an immediate meditative state. Like I meditated on almost the whole way up to Minneapolis one time, which is like 3 hours. So I've gotten to where I can meditate on a plane for huge gaps of time. It's almost like a conscious dream. And the point is that with enough effort and intention, high powerful fears or anxieties can be overcome. It's that I think people think the fear or the anxiety is stronger than their ability to get through it. Or they've tried and they've quit enough times that the anxiety grew. But that's to me the lesson that I got from that, is that we can get through something like that.
Yeah. It's definitely possible to overcome some of the things that you gone through. You're example of that. I'm an example of that. Everyone's an example of that. So to answer the question from where it started, yes, you can still have anxiety and still be effective pack leader.
There you go.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you click on, if you're on YouTube, make sure you click on that thumbs up button. and the subscribe button. Thank you guys so much. And we've got some pretty exciting things. We're coming up on episode 50 towards the end, which we'll kind of release what we're going to be doing for that. So,
and if you want to dress like Art and Todd, wear a gray shirt, black glasses, and a black hat.
All right.